Intro. Evanescence's album Fallen, which is their first album, is a really good way to get the general vibe of the 2000s rock. The album came out in 2003, and also the first album. So, a launch for the band. Other than this being the year the Iraq War really started, there was a big launch of rock albums that came out around this time, as it was the main genre in some way. Linkin Park's Meteor came out around this time as well, which really did bring this genre of music into as close to mainstream as you could get was like rock music, because pop still exists, but rock grew a lot just due to how it's able to show this rebellious side, and especially during this time period, rebellion was really the main aesthetic to be. I don't know if you've seen any, and I mean any styles from the 2000s decade, but if you have, you can tell it's a style. And one of the aesthetics in the decade was the emo adjacent style that followed was rock. But with rock came this album, which actually was able to have a few hit songs and is one of the albums people sometimes often revisit when they come back to this decade of rock. But let's look at why that is through the lyrics of the album. Rock lyrics are typically either two things: rebellious, as mentioned before, or depressing if they have any piano in them. The songs from Fallen switch between these two lyric types, but lean more to the depressing side because this isn't full-on nu metal, it's just an on the edge of being it. For example, we can take the hit song from the album, which is the Bring Me to Life song. It has a rebellious instrumental where it feels like you want to punch something. That's what being a rebel is all about. But the lyrics are more sad because the song is about a lot of things, but also bringing somebody back when they are at their lowest. The lyrics aren't like the most emotional thing for a theme like that, but that's what like bands like Sleep Token are for, really. And Bring Me to Life, it is about this idea of actually being happy was what something that this decade really wasn't for a lot of people. It's about the idea of people needing to find true happiness, because if you are happy in just a shell of a human, are you really happy, or are you just existing? There is a difference, because in this song, there is an emptiness in a joy-filled state. Emptiness can basically be equal to just existing without feeling. The feeling when you go on with your day and nothing happens that's special. And it's just to get the day finished with. It's really a nothing burger day. That's what the emptiness that's talked about in the song kind of really refers to. The nothingness of the day and the missing of anything but something happening throughout it. Finding joy is a thing we all want to do. I don't think that's really a contested idea. We all are in the pursuit of happiness, but sometimes people just stop and give up on it because of a range of circumstances. It happens naturally in the world, but some people stop for too long that they start to retreat in a way, and that's what the song is really about, which is a good theme because in the decade of 9/11, but also the Iraq War, a lot of people at the time were more caught up in the current events and the bleakness that fear caused. It's just what happens to people, but there is a point where people have to try to better their life, because living with sadness won't move you anywhere like pushing for happiness would. There's many ways to push for happiness, so just suggesting one wouldn't be great, because everyone is different. The snowflake metaphor. There's no unified ideology everyone follows. So everyone finds happiness differently. that would be a video for someone else to do, because I'm not going to claim to be a therapist or anything like that. But moving on to the other hit song from the album called My Immortal. The song is about the depressing topic that is losing someone. It's something that happens in everyone's life at least once, and it's one of those painful experiences that is kind of hard to deal with when it happens to you in IRL. In the song, it also talks about the grieving process through the lyric that says, "And now I'm bound by the life you left behind." End quote. In the lyric, it's talking about really just the idea of how when you're with someone you love, then usually what happens is you think of the memories you spent with them. They feel connected to you in a way, which is why when they're gone from your life in a way, really, it hurts more because it feels like a part of you is gone, essentially. And when a part of you is gone, it leaves an empty void to appear. An emptiness that usually you wouldn't want to fill because it feels wrong to you. To replace someone like that, but then you really have two options on what to do with that void. They also depend on how you handle loss and your values in a way, because sometimes loyalty takes over the grief process, I've noticed. What some people do is they leave the void blank because loyalty to them is an important factor in how they grieve. It's not one concurrent idea, because a collective way to grieve doesn't exist. But it revolves around the way that it's hard to get over someone by replacing them with something else. It makes sense. It feels like you're just getting rid of all the good times in this sense. That's how some people could view it. And why would anybody want to do that? It doesn't make sense to replace the good memories and forget somebody. So some people revel in these memories because these were the good times. And sometimes all people want to live in is the good times. It's like a form of comfort for people, as it is most places. And that makes people feel good when they're in like a spot of comfort in a way. If you get lost in these good times and how they're gone, you're probably more likely to lay around and roll around in them. There is no correct way to move on with grief, but a lot of people who move on usually move on with the memories, realizing that reveling in the times like that, which are in the past, isn't the right answer. There's nothing you can do but move forward, because time doesn't stop for any of us. We stop, but we must move on in reality. That's really the main theme of the song. You can't let the memories make yourself stop progressing in life, because what then will you do to make new ones? It's a decision that actually matters in life, because how you live matters. That's life. Which kind of brings us to the next song, which is another hit quote from the album, but it has a good message, so I kind of wanted to talk about it. Going Under is the song name. It's the first track on the album, but has the message of trying to escape an abusive relationship. As mentioned when I talked about Punisher, the album, I don't want to, and I will not go into like personal stuff relating like to the artist, because I don't know. That's for genius. And it's better if I looked at things from like a general sense, in my opinion. Now, looking at the lyrics, there are a lot of things to unpack, especially with like the third verse, where it mainly deals with like gaslighting, and we can just look at the first lyric when it says like blurring and stirring the truth and the lies. This is just what gaslighting is. Making someone think that they're lying to themselves, or misremembering something when it obviously was true the way they saw it. And like gaslighting is, bam, I'm gonna lie to you to make you believe something else. Of course, everyone should know that gaslighting is bad. Because it's basic knowledge, but the important thing that goes overlooked is when it's happening to somebody. It's hard to spot because usually it's not your first thought when it happens, but a lot of people end up falling into the trap of believing it sometimes. It's hard to spot. But usually it would do this thing called hurt you. And that's bad for you because you shouldn't be hurt in a good relationship. It's not good then. It's toxic or bad if it's consistent pain. But I'm not a relationship expert per se. I just give my thoughts on things like this. Back to gaslighting though. It makes you not be able to trust yourself. And that's one aspect of the relationship being toxic. The other can be seen in the first verse of the song where it says, "Screaming, deceiving, and bleeding for you, and you still won't hear me." This has to do with how in bad relationships, usually someone doesn't care about the other one or may just ignore what goes on with their life. It's really like when people who do this just want a relationship to enter a relationship, which isn't something you want to do. If you enter a relationship like that, or with the mindset that relationship is only going to be bad, the grass ain't green on the other side, little bro. That's not how that works. The grass is just the same as it was exactly where you are. Nothing is changing with like a mindset at all, which is going to cause bad. You also don't want to be in something just to be in something. Because what's the point? What's the point at that point? What are you doing if you're in that and you have no goals, no aspirations, no long-term commitments? It's chipmunk energy. It's also bad because you might and will hurt the other person if your whole thing is just based on lies. Lies on top of lies build more lies. They don't build a new truth as some people want to think. Through the internet, you see and hear everything. So you hear the reasons people do this, and they think that they can just turn a lie into a truth. What? When that isn't the case. That is definitely not the case. That's what happens in a little movie called Perks of Being a Wallflower as well. And so, where people just try to hope for change. Hoping doesn't do anything. You have to do something about it, bro. Change can come naturally, but usually in stuff like this, you have to not rely on that and try to change yourself from the inside. Because with stuff like that, where you have to rely on others to help you change, what control do you have in your life, bro? That's what it boils down to, really. Actually being transparent and being honest with people and following that ideology. Actually, that's what a truth is. I know the hits were covered only for the lyrics, but that's because they all have general themes that have deeper meanings that can actually be explored deeper and deeper, and you can actually get philosophical in quotes with them. And they're the songs everyone knows. There's more lyrics in the album overall, but these ones everyone knows, and they have good themes, so they can be covered. So that's why I decided to only cover them. As mentioned before, this came out in a different period when the Afghanistan and Iraq wars were very prominent in the media, since that's how you counter terrorism, I guess. But this caused a lot of sadness or worriness in the world. It wasn't caused by these wars specifically, but it was an effect of the wars, where people were looking for something else to turn to. These songs usually were ways to escape that reality, to turn to something that might have helped them in some way, whether that be comfort or a form of rebellion, because those are two things that are big feelings for the time period, especially with the sound of how the songs move rather than the lyrics that the songs have when you hear them. Like in this case, some of the songs move more quicker, but also have this sense of rebellious attitude. It's not like other albums during the time where the song's instrumentals made you want to slam your head and start moshing all over the place because it's just that epic and cool. This album has some songs that are just that rebellious. This album, considering it has more piano sounds than the guitar sounds of other albums from the time, would make this album more of a calming album and something you can relax to. When I listen to the album, I can easily imagine somebody crying on their couch to one of these songs, like after a breakup or something. It's just one of, you can feel it. You can get the vibe from that. It's just one of those albums sounds, like the album sounds that just sound like that, you know when you feel it. That sound actually helps to its favor because it makes it so that the album can be seen as something sadder compared to an angry album. Since there was a lot of that went around this time geopolitically, it makes sense to have an album in rock that made you look at you instead of over there or something. Making sure that even if the lyrics aren't based in your life, you can still somewhat apply them to your life. As the lyrics just mentioned before, about how you can apply them to how you interact with people in things and the way life is viewed is important. A lot of things are larger than just you, but the only thing that is the same size as you is yourself. So it's always important to have a mix of external observation but also internal observation. That's what you can get from the album. But the other things about the album that are good is how it can switch but also keep a sort of haunting tune to it, like in the song Haunted. I know that's a bit shocking. It has this really haunted house rock type sound that you could hear when listening to mainly just the instruments, not really the lyrics. The sound of rock was different back then compared to what it is now. And that's mainly because back then, the sound of rock was still forming in a way. The sound now in the mainstream, or the ones you hear more about, is really between pop rock and hardcore metal. Rock still exists, but regular rock doesn't seem to be mainstream like it was back when the album was released. This album has the sound of the early 2000s, which is nice when revisiting it. It's a bit different, and nostalgia's a word you could use for it, but it's like that in a way when you're revisiting it. While maybe it made one of your top 10 lists, the album didn't really make any professional top 10 lists, but it did get good reviews. But on the many websites that review music, I'm not going to go over every one of them. Sadly, Metacritic wasn't really a thing back then when the album came out, so we don't get to see much of them on this album. So on AllMusic, it got a 4.5 out of 5 stars, which is the same score that it got on Billboard. Wow, what a coincidence. Spin, I don't know what that is, but Spin gave it a 4 out of 5, so not everyone wants to put it at that level. And especially for the iconic place for music reviews, not giving into these semi-high scores, because the Rolling Stone gave it a 3 out of 5. Don't worry if you're a school teacher, because Entertainment Weekly gave it a B- for how you grade things. So now that all of that is done, we can see how the album did overall with the charts. It stayed there for a while, so I'll just go over the first 2 years it was there, and also for the US, because there's a lot of countries. In 2003, at the end of the year, it was number 8 on the Billboard 200, and in 2004, it was number 6. So it did gain popularity because probably of current events at the time and the sound, because either nothing came out around that time or it just resonated with more people, which could happen. That's what a resurgence is. So it could be either, but if anybody actually knows, you could comment that below if you really want to. But overall, looks like the album got good reviews. Overall, the album is very good. I would recommend it if you like the style of goth music from this era, since it's able to encapsulate that feeling so well. It almost brings you back to the skateboard days with the Hot Topic shirts when they were popular. Just because of the sound and the lyrics and like everything, I guess. I would personally have to give it a high score of probably around a 9.8 out of 10. If you have a different opinion, you could comment it down below if you want to. If you haven't listened to the album, you should, so you can form your own opinion and have cool like thoughts on it if anybody ever talks about it. But that's about it. Please like and subscribe if you want. Pretty please.